Hello everybody, Andy here again, part 2 of my walk to Rye. I said I was going to try and get to a place called Camber Castle. And I think you can see that in the distance. I'm walking towards it. Sort of isolated castle called Camber Castle. Nowhere near the place called Camber, which is actually the other side of Rye. This particular place is right between Rye and Winchelsea, Winchelsea itself. And I'm getting lost across the fields. I have been here before, some time ago. No real footpaths as such, and so really an isolated little gem of a castle, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Well, here it is. This is Camber Castle, getting a bit closer. As I said, it's just sort of marooned here, and I'll tell you why that is in a minute. But it's quite an amazing place really, because as I said, it's pretty well deserted here. It's pretty much in the middle of nowhere. There's a road across the way. The footpaths aren't easy, and I got lost trying to find them, even after asking directions and looking on my map. It's not easy. I don't think it's owned by English Heritage, who look after a lot of British monuments, historical monuments. And I'm not sure if it's open. If it is, it's only open sort of a few days a year, maybe at the weekends. As I said, I have been here before, and I'll try and show you what you can see of it. There's not much of it. It's really just pretty much a shell, I think. Crows in the background. Well, as you can see, I'm down by the part of the castle here. Tell you a bit about the story. The reason it's so isolated, it was actually commissioned by Henry VIII back in the sort of 1540 or that sort of time. Because as the same with Rye, it was a strategic point here, hard to believe at the moment, but it was commissioned in about 1540, but it was abandoned, I think, even before it was actually started to be used in about 1600 and something, 1640 something, because of the way that the land, the topography had changed, as I said before, about the way that the area had silted up, and this once again now is about a mile or so inland from the sea. So it was built as this was meant to be on the coast, and by the time it had actually been finished, it was useless, it was redundant. The sea had taken its toll, it had silted up this whole particular area around here, as I've mentioned several times before, and so the whole place was abandoned, and now it's just sitting here in the middle of a field, pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and there's no one here apart from me, which is lovely. It's great to be able to come to an ancient monument like this. It's quite an impressive structure. I'll give you a few shots of it as we go around this, and I've got a nice aerial view on the placard thing that's down by the side here, and I'll show you in a minute. Well, here we are. As I said, I've only just found this. It is indeed under English Heritage. There's a nice symbol up there, Camber Castle, and you can see if I come in, you can actually see an aerial view of it, and I think it was done in the sort of shape a bit like a Tudor rose, I suppose. A lot of it's still there. Unfortunately, I can't go in, as I said, because it's only open, if I come down, between the 1st of July and the 30th of September at the weekends, and only for 3 hours. So there you go. So I'm a bit early, but I can still have a look around the outside, and as I said, I should show you a bit of that in a second. Well, I can just show you some of the inside of the castle. That's the sort of central part there, which you might have seen in that aerial view. And come down, you can see how well preserved it is, obviously, because it's never really been used, never been attacked, or anything's really happened to it. I don't suppose anyone's ever lived here at all, so it's pretty much as it was, which is, as I said, it's quite amazing in its own way. And you've got a monument like this, which is nearly 500 years, 450 odd years old, and it's still standing exactly as it was when it was finished, pretty much in pristine condition, with a bit of weather taking its toll, I suppose. I mentioned before about the silting up of this particular area due to the way that the seas change and storms and this type of thing around here as well, right along the coastline, especially on this particular part where Romney Marsh is, this is pretty much the beginning of that. And because of that, it's a great area for bird life. Loads and loads of little pools and just pieces of little bits of open water, not enormous, but enough to attract these migrating birds that come into the country from abroad, from all over, from the south and from the north as well at different times of the year. And it's a great area for bird watchers. Lots of little paths around here as well. So well worth coming to, just to have a look at this place stuck out here in the middle of nowhere, but also you've got lots of bird watchers, wildlife watchers as well. I don't know how well you can see this. As you can see, it's quite an amazing structure still. As I said before, a bit weather beaten. But whether you can make that out there, if I sort of try and pan in slightly, it's where some of the old windows were, some of the old openings, which have been stoned up, boarded up, but stoned up, I suppose, to try and just protect it. When that was done, I don't know. They looked like quite fairly old bricks, I must admit. fairly old stones, and there's quite a bit of that right the way around here. Another view of the inside, peering through the barriers here, and you can see, sort of, as I said before, I keep going on about it, but it's how well preserved, etc. this is. It'd be nice to come here and have a look around the inside. Although I don't suppose there's a great deal to see. It wasn't one of the big castles, it was more of a fortification rather than a dwelling, I think, more than anything else, unlike some, especially some of the older castles, like Hastings, should we say, or even some of the other Norman castles, which have got big keeps and things on there, where people actually lived in them for a long time and were meant for a long-term basis. I don't think this was done fairly rashly, I should imagine, just because of the imminent invasion, possibly of the French or even the Spanish, as Henry's daughter found out later on. I don't know whether this is intentional or where they've taken stones away to use for something else. I suspect it's the latter, but you can see these steps that go up the outside, and there's another one of those windows there right in the middle there, which I said which has also been bricked up, and I imagine that the outside layer has actually been taken and used for something else in the future, because there are some Second World War pillboxes around here, which just shows you the history of the area. Here we are, we've got Henry VIII in 1540, building this particular place as fortification against the French or other invading forces from across the Channel. And around here somewhere, if I can find them, and I will point them out, we've got some more modern Second World War pillboxes to keep other invaders out. You know, I mentioned about pillboxes earlier on, and there's one not very far away from the castle, walking my way back. And I'd say that was a gun emplacement there from the Second World War. Once again, it's a fair way from the sea, but I suppose maybe when people are least expecting it. One of the higher parts of the ground around here, although you've got Winchelsea in the background, which is a bit of a high point, which is why it was built there, obviously. Just to give you some idea of where we are, obviously this is the castle, but in the distance there, if I can pan in very, very slightly, that's Rye in the distance. I didn't mention earlier when I was in the church, St Mary's Church, quite a high point, although inland you've got hills around this part, which is the part that's been reclaimed by the sea, I suppose. That particular church is visible for miles and miles around. You can see it for quite some distance either way across the marshes. Another mixture of the old and new. I don't know whether you can see them, obviously Camber Castle in the foreground, but in the distance, if I can pan in a bit, you might be able to see some of those wind turbines that I did speak of earlier on, just the other side of Rye. And there's a couple of them going around. Apparently they need about 3 miles an hour wind speed to turn and actually produce some electricity. Even at 3 miles an hour, apparently the wind is strong enough to actually produce quite a lot. And there's about 25 of them or so altogether. Sign of the times, I suppose. Only residents here nowadays seem to be crows. Jackdaws, I think they're mainly jackdaws up there at the moment. They must love this place. Well, that's just about it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this little detour to this castle stuck in the middle of nowhere, Henry VIII's castle. So a bit of history in the two sort of parts of this particular video. I don't know how many parts it'll turn out to be, but I'll certainly post this as a separate part. Rye, with the ancient town of Rye, and then not quite so ancient but still pretty damn old Camber Castle, built in the sort of 15 to 1600s and never really used in anger. There's not many castles you can say that about. Maybe that's the point of a castle. It's not meant to be used, but obviously, as I said before, this one was redundant before it was even finished. And if I turn around, you might be able to see there's the castle, and the coastline is back there somewhere. It's in the distance. You can't see the sea from here, and then maybe that's the point. And you can't fire many guns from here to reach the sea from this particular part. Probably a mile or maybe even more of that from away from the sea. It just shows you how the coastline changed then. We're going on about coastal erosion now, and how the tides, the winds, the rising sea levels are actually eating away at our coastline. But back in the Middle Ages, it was actually dumping silt and changing the coastline and making it bigger than what it was. Some of it since then has been man-made, but maybe that's another video. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little detour. I've certainly enjoyed it. It's good to come back out here,